It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You go to emailrevealer.com, and get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. And you can also, if you think your spouse is cheating on you, you can send me their email address. I'll trace it back to online dating websites. And also, if you got an iPhone, I can unlock it for you. How's that, okay? We're going to be talking about that on the after show tonight. We do all kinds of cell phone forensics and stuff, and there's a lot about that story out in the news. It's a little shady to me. Okay, the first time you listen to this show, check out OppermanReport.com. Okay, you go there, and we got a member section with extra shows. A little confusion about that. We do the live show free Friday night. That's free, like we're doing tonight with our guest, Dyer. And then we do the Saturday afternoon show on American Freedom Radio. That's free. But I do extra shows for you because I love my audience so much. I love you guys so much. You have no idea. I give you these extra shows, but you got to pay me for them. Those we charge you for. Okay. And by the way, guys, in the chat room, we are live tonight. I'm doing this live, every kind of way live. We have tonight with us Dyer, and he's the author of the upcoming book called Esoteric Hollywood. And he also has a website called JaysAnalysis.com, and it has he has a podcast that's a subscriber based, and he also writes all kinds of stuff. So everything's there. So Jay, are you there?
I am, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question, man. JaysAnalysis.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of people who can't spell analysis and have trouble getting to that site?
Well, I get a bunch of dumb jokes about anal cysts.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if that was the best choice, but you know, this kind of stuff happens where you say I'm going to start a blog and you pick a name and then it grows and then you're God, was that the best choice? I don't know. Too late now.
Yeah, because I got a website called Email Revealer, and nobody knows how to spell Revealer.
Email revelers, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Okay, so tell us about yourself, Jay. Who is Jay Dyer?
Oh, well, I'm a CIA plant, and I'm here to obfuscate. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm a guy from the South who grew up in San Diego. My dad was in the Navy, and we moved back to the South when he ended his naval term. And so I grew up kind of back in my hometown, and a small-town guy who lived in San Diego and went to college. My parents were big fans of the arts. So I always grew up with books and interests in, theater, acting, comedy, stand-up, film, you name it. And so when I went to college, I thought, I want to study history of religions. I want to study philosophy. I want to study the arts. And so that's what I did. And then I guess about age 18 or 19, I got really interested in alternative history, conspiracies, things like that. Started reading about the UN and different conspiracy theories about that stuff, and that kind of took me into this whole alternative sphere of information that really would bloom in the last 15 years, I guess, through the internet. And I've always loved books, so I just would read on any kind of topic I could get my anything I could get my hands on, I would read. So really the website's just kind of a reflection of my interests. And the reason that there's a lot of movie analyses is that's, kind of what drives the traffic. That's what everybody likes to read. But that's actually not the majority of what's there. Majority of what's there is geopolitics, philosophy, espionage, history, literature analysis, etc. And, there's like 500 articles that deal with that. And there's about 105 or so film analyses. So this is ironic, the film analyses are really what everybody comes to the site for. And then, if they perchance get interested, they can read all these weird other articles that deal with, all kinds of other crazy topics. So It's a little bit of everything, I guess you could say, and it's mainly my work, probably 90 to 95% my work, and it's just kind of what I like to do.
And how old are you now?
I just turned 37.
37, okay. And how long have you been doing this website?
This site I've done for about 5 or 6 years. 5 years. I had an older site that dealt with a lot of the same material, but I got rid of it and decided to rebrand it. So I guess I've been blogging about 8 or 9 years, and it kind of takes that long to really build it up into something that has an archive and people can really dig into. So like I said, you've got 600-700 articles there that you can really dig into. It deals with everything, man. I really think there's not another site like it. That's kind of cliche, I guess, but I don't think in our genre of topics that we deal with, in alternative media or whatever, I don't really think there's anything like my site.
Okay. Now you got this book coming up too, Esoteric Hollywood. I guess it's the same kind of thing, but what do you got planned for that?
Right. Well, so I started with film. That's really what got me going on the website. Was you start if you grew up loving movies, as probably most Americans do. I always took an interest in all things religious, philosophical, and theological, and so you start noticing that, much like you would do literary analysis, maybe in college, the same kind of stuff's going on in movies. And so I just started writing film analyses, not from the perspective of, Roger Ebert or Leonard Maltin, telling you whether the film's good or not, but, like what's actually going on under the surface here. And that's a legitimate, avenue of interpretation, especially if you get a university education, you'll learn how to read novels this way. And so I thought, well, why not take that same approach and apply it to film, but not just do a literary reading of film, but actually, point out, this is, a history of, say, a spy operation, black ops, covert ops, that's based in reality. And, you start to learn, this is what I focused on in grad school, is that the fictional presentation in the film or a novel actually can become part of the story, right? Because especially in propaganda or psyops, what's presented in Hollywood is going to be a big factor in determining the perception of the people in the audience in terms of how they're going to interpret some event. So, Michael Bay is going to direct a Benghazi movie, and that's going to influence people's interpretation far more than bare bones news reporting, right? So that's kind of what it's all about. I take everything that I've learned in, many years of philosophy and comparative religion, and I apply that to film analysis to produce what I think is, a really unique approach to reading film.
Hey, did I just lose you?
No. Sometimes I mute.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. All right, yeah, I thought I was. Okay, and now I was going to ask you, are you familiar with Tom Secker's work and Pierce Redmond, how they analyze those films? And what they do, too, is Tom's done this work that's incredible. It's on spyculture.com. I've had him on the show a couple of times, where they get the Freedom of Information Act requests for the military and the FBI and their Hollywood liaison offices, and how much influence the DOD and the CIA and the FBI and all these agencies have in not just movies and TV shows, but even reality TV shows. One of them that they uncovered was a contestant on American Idol was from Fort Bragg, and he was in the psychological warfare department from Fort Bragg. And he has all the documents on that. Have you looked into that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, I have. I've cited those types of instances many times in my articles. There's a lot of books on this. Tricia Jenkins has a book, Hollywood and the CIA. James Rizzo has a book about CIA and Hollywood and drug trafficking. So, there's no shortage of information like that. And I enjoy Tom Secker's work quite a bit. We've chatted here and there. I have made use of their work, and he's linked me as well. So there's definitely cross-pollination and cross-interest there. We do deal with a lot of the same material. The only difference is that while they deal a lot with geopolitics and espionage in Hollywood, I deal a lot with the occult and esoteric as well. So there's I'm not trying to one up those guys. I think they do really great work, and we're on good terms. But I take another dimension as well, where I deal with archetypes. I deal with the esoteric. I deal with cult and occult presentations in film. And the symbolism and symbology that goes into film is very important. I believe that's its own kind of language. It's encapsulated in its own sort of intertextual context, as it's called. And it becomes, like I said before, its own kind of script, right? That requires, I guess you could say, eyes to see to read it. I'm not trying to say I'm like a guru or anything, but that's what I do. So I take something like David Lynch's Twin Peaks, which was a very, very esoteric presentation of what I take to be an allegorical reading of America. So if you watch Twin Peaks, the series, the two series, and the film, you're dealing with occult ritual murder, and that's actually what the conclusion of the series is about. Spoiler alert if you've never seen it, sorry, but that's what the film is about. And so I wrote a really extensive analysis of that, dealing with ancient religions and so forth. And I think I don't mean to toot my horn too much here, but
no, go ahead.
But what really sets my stuff off from something like Vigilant Citizen or whatever is that I really try to make it relatively academic, pretty scholarly, but not so academic or scholarly that it's too abstruse for mainstream readers. It's very readable. I try to be affable in my prose and style, but the content is a little bit it's meatier than something like Vigilant Citizen, so it's an alternative to that kind of stuff. And I was actually doing my stuff before there was a Vigilant Citizen anyway, but that's a different story. So yeah, it's if you like Tom Secker's stuff, you'll love JaysAnalysis. It might be a little more, edging on comparative religion and stuff like that, theology. But there's definitely I've probably reviewed 15 or 20 espionage films and how they relate to real world events. I did my graduate work on Ian Fleming and his Bond series, and the whole background of propaganda that went into who the character of Ian Fleming was, and the whole, not just the novels that Ian Fleming wrote, but also the 23 or so films. They all actually present real world espionage, covert/black operations.
Really? Did you ever notice that one? What was it? The one where they had that scene where the guys had landed on the moon. Remember what was that one?
That's in Diamonds Are Forever, and that's curious because that's the film, as I've mentioned many times, that is about Howard Hughes. The stand-in character played by Jimmy Dean is a stand-in for Howard Hughes, and that's explicit in the film as well as if you do graduate work, you're going to read all the secondary material on it, or a large portion of it, and then all the secondary, scholarly sources actually back up that fact. It's pretty obvious when you watch the film, and that's why the character in the film kind of disappears for a few years, where he's like hiding out and nobody can find him. And this was actually what happened to Howard Hughes, where he supposedly disappeared for a while, and there's actually FBI files on Howard Hughes' story and his disappearance and all that. So this ties into the rumored gemstone files and Mae Brussel and all that, which I'm not intending on going down that rabbit hole, but it is very fascinating, and that's one instance of where you can see the movie presentation, at least, tying in all of these real-world espionage events. The novel Diamonds Are Forever, however, is not like that movie. It's loosely based on the movie. But Ian Fleming was, of course, in contact with Broccoli and Saltzman, who produced it throughout this period. So, there's still the possibility that even in these later film adaptations, you're still getting, real, actual events that went down, kind of revelation of the method type stuff.
And so then what did you make about that scene with the moon landing, when they were faking the moon landing?
I think that's it was intentional. There's no question in my mind that, if you look at the character of Ian Fleming, I've talked about this a lot. He was a high-level naval psyops guy. He was involved in the special operations executive that the British ministry started to focus solely on World War II propaganda and deception. He worked with a character by the name of Dennis Wheatley, William Stevenson, Maxwell Knight. These are all guys in his circle who focused on special operations, and it was all about deception, trickery, stagecraft, and a lot of the techniques that Hollywood would use. So you can see why Ian Fleming would, immediately go into writing fiction and when working in Hollywood. There's a direct tie-in there. By the way, but you didn't know that Christopher Lee, famous actor who recently passed away, was also a member of the Special Operations Executive, tied into British intelligence.
Actually, so I do remember that. I'm not the big fan of Christopher Lee, but I do recall hearing that.
Yes, and you find this everywhere. This is what's so fascinating, is that you can look at other characters in these circles. Roald Dahl, who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Fantastic Mr. Fox. Roald Dahl was a British intelligence agent who worked with Walt Disney to help craft propaganda that Disney would film. And this is a circle of people known as the Korda Circle. And this is Samuel Goldwyn of Goldwyn-Mayer, Douglas Fairbanks, Walter Wagner. And they worked also with Alfred Hitchcock. And so a lot of what they were doing was World War II propaganda, back in the 40s. And then when it transitioned to the Cold War, you had a lot of these same guys just kind of continuing their theatrics. And that's something that I focus on a lot, is the parallel between Hollywood and espionage. These are two worlds that I think in the minds of most people are not really connected, other than, well, there's a lot of spy movies and there's a character named James Bond. But a lot of actors have been spies, and that's what's really, makes the story, a meta level, right, fascinating.
Yeah, it's disturbing too, No.
Well, it is, because what you have with Hitchcock is, not just the idea of creating war propaganda for. He actually filmed 2 films that were not well known, that were for the French Resistance, and you might think, oh, well, that's that's the good guys. Well, the problem is that he would later go on to have associations with the Tavistock Institute. You can actually find documentation that the Tavistock Institute techniques of social engineering and creating terror were working hand in hand with what Hitchcock was doing. They liked what Hitchcock was doing. Hitchcock said he wanted to use the same methodology of some of these psychological operations masters to create terror, right? So there you have a direct connection between PSYOPs and Hollywood, particularly in the character of Hitchcock. And it's not by accident that, Cary Grant worked for military intelligence. He outed Errol Flynn, supposedly, as a Nazi sympathizer. You have Jimmy Stewart. These are 2 fixtures of Hitchcock films. Jimmy Stewart also reportedly worked for the FBI and starred in the 1959 film The FBI Story, where he is an FBI agent, and the film is actually given approval by J. Edgar Hoover. So a lot of what's going on throughout these decades of Hollywood ties directly into intelligence. And another thing I point out quite often that's kind of curious is that if you read a lot on espionage, the history of spycraft, you generally get the impression, especially from Western writers, that something like swallows or ravens, or as they're called, or sex espionage, that this was a feature of foreign nations. So the Soviets and the NKVD and Stalin would engage in this, but the CIA, the West, the OSS, they would never do this. Well, that's actually not true. Surprise, surprise. You can curiously and ironically watch 2 Hitchcock films where the CIA and OSS actually do this. The 1944 film Notorious, with Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman, actually features Cary Grant as a raven, the male sex operative, who lures Ingrid Bergman into becoming a sex operative as well for the OSS at that time, which was founded in 1942, I think. And so then with 1947, you have the CIA, and then with, for example, North by Northwest, Cary Grant appears once again, a man out of the advertising world, wrapped up in the spy world, with Ava Marie Saint, who's playing the character Ava Kendall in North by Northwest. She lures Cary Grant into a sexual operation where she's spying on James Mason, who is a Soviet. So what I'm getting at is that, curiously, even in the midst of the narrative that, the West and the OSS and CIA never engaged in sex espionage, you simultaneously have the movies by Hitchcock presenting the fact that they do. And I believe that they do. So, this is not a feature that was something, only the nefarious Soviets did. This was actually a feature of espionage throughout the last several thousand years. This is nothing new.
Oh, boy, this is depressing.
Well, I don't mean to be depressing.
No, it's not your fault.
Goofy stuff.
It's heavy stuff, man, because it just...
Well, you're talking about the West Memphis 3. I mean, that's not exactly,
no,
flowers in Candyland.
No, I agree. But the West Memphis 3 is like isolated to a small... Well, and it's isolated in a way, but when you think of because... Is it overwhelming to try and resist this government and oppression, this spy agency, if they control all the media and they control all the movies and they control everything that we're watching and stuff? It becomes like it's an overwhelming task to try and oppose it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think they control everything in the sense of there's a lot of independent movies that get made that have good messages, but unfortunately, anything blockbuster is going to be controlled for sure.
Oh yeah. Now, let me ask you a question. We're going back a ways. Now, it seems also, too, and this is kind of a different category than what we've discussed so far, that they seem to want to come out with the official version of big events, like the O.J. trial, like the Jim Jones People's Temple, how they came out with that that series. It was a 2-part TV movie. Another one was the McMartin. They came out with a story about the McMartin case. And where they come up with their official version, and another one was Jeffrey McDonald, because I've become friends with his wife, his current wife, Catherine McDonald, and it's like they have an official version that they want to put out and kind of brainwash the public that everybody, when they think of the Jeff McDonald case, they think of that TV series from the 70s or the 80s, a long time ago, or when they think of McMartin, they says, "No, I saw that movie. It can't be. Everybody knows it's fake." What do you make of that kind of stuff?
I think that a lot of times that coordination that you're speaking of is intentional.
Right.
I don't think there's any other way around it. And while that may sound far-fetched, the more that you delve into this kind of stuff, you will notice just countless examples of coordination across the board that cannot be accidental or coincidental. There has to be forethought, planning, and strategy involved in this. And this is kind of where I come in and say, oh, yeah, there is. And, I can tell you, how that is. And, the CIA has been doing this for a long time. Films like Argo, this is based on a book by Antonio Mendez. Antonio Mendez is the CIA's guy for disguised as in subterfuge throughout the Cold War, according to his book on it. And so then the film Argo gets made, and, you watch interviews of Ben Affleck, and he says, the Hollywood's full of the CIA. That's everywhere. This is public mainstream information. So there's nothing secretive about this. There are interviews with Bruce Willis where he says, acting is a lot like working in the CIA, and the CIA is a lot like working in Hollywood. If you have mainstream A-listers talking about this openly, it shouldn't be that far of a stretch, I don't think. But that's really how propaganda and psychological operations have always worked. You go all the way back to, like I mentioned earlier, Howard Hughes. He was making war propaganda films back in the 30s, Hell's Angels. This was World War, I guess leading up to World War II. Hardcore propaganda that was, demonizing any opponent of American foreign policy, American expansionism. So, it's really a banker's game. I don't mean to get off into that, but if you look at who funds the studios, where their money comes from, and even a lot of studios are actually tied into money laundering, and they can be kind of shells or front corporations for hiding tax money, hiding liquid cash, and so forth. There's that whole side of Hollywood that can't be missed as well, which ties into the mob and mafia and all that. Actually, this is referenced in the Godfather trilogy, believe it or not. If you go back and watch those 3 movies, you'll get a in-depth insight into all the things that I'm saying. In fact, in the first film, the Godfather's I don't know if it's the guy he's the singer, and he's going to marry somebody, maybe Godfather's daughter, I can't remember, but he comes to me and says, "Oh, Godfather, I need the spot in this movie," right? And then Vito Corleone sends his guy out to Walt's Pictures and says, "My guy's going to be in your movie," right? And the guy says, "Hey, I'm not putting that guy in my damn movie. There's no way." And then he wakes up with a horse head in his bed. Right? Now, Mario Puzo's book is actually based on the testimony of real mafia people, and of course, there's the rumor that he had to get approval from the Sicilian mafia to write the book. I don't know how true that is, but this gives us an image, a picture, is what I'm trying to say, and this is where you see. Hollywood ties in, Vegas ties in with, Godfather 2, where they're expanding into Vegas and Cuba, and, the revolution in Cuba happens and so forth. So, this is all based on reality, and that's what I try to focus on, is to illustrate, the real world events and how much of this ties into espionage, not just spy films. There's a lot of movies that aren't technically spy films, but deal with all these kinds of topics.
Now, you mentioned before Ben Affleck coming out and Bruce Willis coming out and making like public statements. Has anybody really come out and blown the whistle on all this kind of stuff and really talked about it?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of books and there's a lot of mainstream kind of just blasé, oh, no big deal. Yeah, J.J. Abrams is working with the CIA on Alias, big deal. Oh, yeah, Chase Brennan, Milt Bearden, their CIA liaisons with Hollywood, and they, consult and help with all these movies. The CIA worked directly on the film The Recruit, and, part of it was filmed at the farm, and, but there's a million articles that talk about this stuff openly. But, it's, I guess it's not, it's just not something in the mass mind that's perceived to be, a real connection. They don't really. Most people, I don't think, have an understanding of how the world, really operates. So it's not really known. It's not really perceived.
Now,
but it's everywhere. I mean, Jennifer Garner went from Alias to doing PR with the CIA.
Oh, bro, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now, what about a guy like Woody Harrelson? This guy, his father is allegedly, even possibly involved in one of the JFK assassins. But he was an assassin. He was a hired assassin for sure.
Yeah, he's a hitman, and of course, Woody says he's estranged from that guy, and he didn't have contact with him, and who knows? I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you can turn up. I haven't really delved into Woody Harrelson's history or anything, or read any bios of him. I wouldn't say that this is a foolproof test, but a lot of times you can kind of get maybe a hint based on the roles that people play, and I actually think there is a deeper, this is my own speculative theory, but I wonder at times if there isn't a reason why certain people are chosen for certain roles for a reason. And, if you believe in esoteric, woo-woo, juju, occult type stuff, there would be a reason why this would be, because it would, if you go back to like the Stanislavski method of acting, which is based on occult techniques, where you're really supposed to actually take on the persona of the actor or the person that you're playing in the role. And Stanislavski was directly involved in occult practices. So, if people take that perspective, and of course a lot of the Hollywood A-listers are method actors, they might have the worldview. Certain producers and directors might have the worldview that, you can actually ritually or magically charge the performance through this kind of what's called correspondence or association. So if, Jennifer Garner's, I'm not saying Jennifer Garner's like in some occult thing. I'm just saying, for example, if she's really was recruited by the CIA, well, it makes sense why she might play a spy in a film. And a lot of these people that are playing spy roles are the people that we find out are spies, curiously.
Yeah, and you have Woody Harrelson. He played an assassin in No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, he's played an assassin quite a few times.
Yeah, Natural Born Killers.
As has John Cusack. And John Cusack is curious because he made that famous statement a while back about whenever Maps to the Stars came out, and he gave an interview, I think, with The Guardian or somewhere, where he said, look, you want to know what Hollywood is? Hollywood is a big whorehouse. And, there's some interesting documentaries on Hollywood and secret societies where you can kind of trace out and get a picture of what's going on. And it starts to make sense that, how actually what you're doing, if you're a high profile actress and you're good looking and you're playing a role, you're kind of advertising yourself. And sometimes this could mean you're advertising yourself for playing in a rich guy's fantasy.
Yeah. So
when you watch Eyes Wide Shut, this is a perfect example of what I'm getting at. I have a detailed analyses of most of the films that we've discussed. Watch Eyes Wide Shut. That's you're peering into what really goes on. As hard as that might be to believe for some people, but it shouldn't be that hard to believe. Given now that we're starting to learn this stuff about Savile and these, the Franklin cover up, why would it be hard to believe that something like what we see in Eyes Wide Shut is real?
I was involved with someone. I'm a private investigator, and I worked at a client who ran an escort service in Hollywood. With a lot of A-list actors and stuff like that. And I was told that a lot of these, especially the younger actresses, in big TV series, you would see, would go and do prostitution like to these, they would go to a Dubai and stuff like that and get paid $100,000. Yeah.
It's also, it's also a good blackmail tool as well.
I've heard.
I know you're probably well familiar with that, but a lot of people probably don't think about the fact that I don't know about the Heidi Fleiss situation in particular, if that was like a blackmail thing, but I'm just using it as an example. You've got all these big time Hollywood people. You got senators, government types, who are using her services. A lot of times the madam would be the person who might be, the informant or who might be working with some government agency. That's another angle on how this kind of stuff all kind of ties together. And interestingly, I mentioned The Godfather. You watch Godfather 2, there's that wild scene where the Michael Corleone needs the senator to okay one of his projects or whatever it is, some legality. And the senator doesn't want to go along with it, so they just wait until the senator comes to one of the Corleone-owned brothels and then get him in the bed with the dead hooker.
Yeah.
So then they've got the legality they need. So that's a lot of what goes to. People have talked about this in terms of the NSA and the spying. This is an angle where that ties in, where a lot of the NSA stuff is could be blackmail mainly for government types.
Yeah, people have no idea how prevalent blackmail is. Okay, let's take a commercial break. We're here with Jay Dyer, a really brilliant guy. I think a little over my head. I'm very impressed, Jay. Jay Dyer. His website is JaysAnalysis.com, and he's the author of the upcoming book Esoteric Hollywood. So if you're enjoying this, you go to JaysAnalysis.com. He also has a subscription that you can subscribe to that keeps things going. So we'll be right back after these messages here with more of Jay Dyer and his book Esoteric Hollywood. Let me just pull this up here. And everybody complains about the static, so I got to mute up over here. Okay, we'll be right back after these messages. Oh, come on. Now what's going on here? Okay, here we go. Okay, there you go. And now a word from our sponsors. Pacific West Bamboo, your premier source for sustainable building material. They provide construction-grade and craft-grade bamboo material for all your indoor, outdoor, and gardening needs. Contact them for event planning and display building as well. 503-839-8126. Or you go to their new website, PacificWestBamboo.com. Or you can contact them on Facebook at Pacific West Bamboo. 503-839-8126. Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo is our first sponsor. So good to us. So please support her community. I want to make everybody aware of our new member section at www.oppermanreport.com. You can go there and sign up music interviews, my own investigations and reports, and we're going to be adding sections with documents, images, police reports, either provided by myself or by my guests, or for my own investigation, my own reports. So you can go to oppermanreport.com and you can sign up there tonight and start listening to Strawman. I want to mention Strawman. Strawman is a band out of Toronto, Canada. They're good friends of the Opperman Report. They're a trio of guys who share the same mindset most of us here do, and they put that energy into their words and music. So check them out at strawmanmusic.com and drop them a line to let them know that you heard it here on the Opperman Report. We'll be doing an interview with Sean Duffy soon. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, by visiting my PI website, emailrevealer.com. We also offer computer and cell phone forensics. We can recover deleted text messages to uncover infidelity. We offer asset searches, locates, email tracing, background reports. And you can even trace your spouse's email address back to internet dating websites to catch them cheating online. You can reach us at 800-572-9762, or you can email me at emailrevealer@aol.com. New World Mexican Women. Everyone loves the New World Mexican Women, and their line of fine, handcrafted, authentic Mexican jewelry of stone mosaic and abalone stone inlay. In their first book, titled New World Mexican Women, available on lulu.com, they teach you how to make this jewelry, and they have a collection of love letters to their men from their hometown that have immigrated to the United States to find work. They have also published a new book entitled Azuquina to the Rodeo. It's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider, and she runs away with him without telling her family. You can find the New World Mexican Women by Googling New World Mexican Women. And you can ask them about their deals on wholesaling their fine jewelry and all of the other projects that they have going on. If you'd like to have your business or website advertised here and promoted all over the world on dozens of stations every day, give us a call at 800-572-9762 or email oppermanreport@gmail.com. And now back to our show. Well, not so soon. First, we're going to talk about MichiganMushrooms.net. They offer the highest quality chaga chunks available anywhere, picked fresh from healthy live trees in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, sun-dried and quickly shipped to you. They're very proud of their long-standing reputation as trusted farmers and collectors of wild, gourmet, and medicinal mushrooms. Customer service and offering high-quality products is very important to them. And they have a strict grading system that begins in the woods, and they would rather pass up a chunk that looks bad instead of passing it off to you, the customer. Additionally, they are recognized by the state of Michigan as mushroom experts. They are certified by the Department of Agriculture to sell 20 different species of mushrooms, and proof of this certification is available upon request. That is MichiganMushrooms.net or on Facebook, Michigan Mushrooms LLC. Got a brand new sponsor, The Rodeo of Doom by Miguel La Sala. The year is 2384, and Henry Fields is a down-on-his-luck adjunct professor in the architecture department at Andreas Tangen University in Los Angeles. But he has one thing going for him that others don't. He has enough of the coveted EP14 to live to be 200, if he wants to. Not that hard. When he saves a woman for certain death with a few drops of the EP14, a corrupt government agency tries to blackmail him into selling off his supply. Just when it seems like it might be a good idea, all hell breaks loose. The Rodeo of Doom was written by Miguel La Sala and edited by Margaret A. Harrell, the author of Keep This Quiet, memoir series. Now, she was also the copy-edited Hunter S. Thompson's breakthrough book, Hell's Angels. According to Harrell, the Rodeo of Doom will grip you and pull you into the wild ride of a different reality. This is a consciously fast-paced journey into the future. Author Miguel La Sala reveals his craft by intricately weaving in fine details for his reader and keeps you anxiously anticipating what will happen next. Do not wait to read this book. There will surely be more to come from this author. The Rodeo of Doom is available on Amazon.com, and there's a link to the Rodeo of Doom in the Opperman Report bookstore. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Jay Dyer, and he's the author of the upcoming book, Esoteric Hollywood, and he runs the website, JaysAnalysis.com, where he has all these articles about this kind of stuff, and also to a podcast that you can subscribe to and listen to. So, Jay, you still there?
I am.
Now, okay, so now we were going over, I can understand the motivation for the CIA and, them, that crowd, you know what I mean, to want to brainwash us and have, what do you call it, propaganda.
Sure.
And I can understand, too, the whole sex thing and the prostitution and escorts background, that goes on. But now, what is the motivation on such a grand level of all this occult activity, like when you got the Super Bowl and the Grammys and all that kind of stuff? Mm-hmm. What do you got?
Well, I would say that you have, if you look historically, back to ancient cultures, religions, the elite, the upper crust, they generally took on the attitude of believing themselves to be divine or semi-divine, right? They had a demigod status, and this was something that was projected to, the masses. And it was really, really the priest class that was involved in that and helped prop that up. And quite often, these cultures, I believe, would delve into human sacrifice. And, the ancient view of why there would be human sacrifice, you have to understand that ancient man didn't see the world as we do post-Enlightenment. So they saw what I mentioned before, a correspondence or associations between things having a real connection. So, the planet Mercury would have a real association or connection to the metal mercury, right? The element. So there's a real subtle plane, right, that undergirds reality, the ether in Greek metaphysics, that connects things outside of space and time. And so they have, it's believed to have I guess you could call it a magical correspondence. And this is really the foundation or what undergirds all ancient and even medieval religious practice across the board. And so they had a completely different cosmology, completely different worldview. And, when you combine that with, the idea of the upper class, upper crust viewing themselves in this divine way, then they're kind of like the top of the food chain, right? And so the underclass, the masses, whatever, they're viewed as cattle, as food, as, basically a parasitical elite feeds on them, propping up the mythology that they are divine. And, whatever your view of ancient religion, whether you believe in spirits or ghosts or God or not, that's at least a fact of anthropology, that's how culture has functioned. And I believe that a lot of people, even in the modern world, still have this view. Now, granted, there are plenty of upper crust elites who are just rank atheists who don't believe anything, and it's pure pragmatic power politics. But I think you have a good portion who do believe in the reality of magic, of the occult, different strands, different tastes, whatever, voodoo, Crowley, all that stuff. There are people who do take it serious. And, if you read enough, I'm sure you've read a good bit on it, given your profession. In my own research, at university and so forth, you can find plenty of mainstream works that deal with ritual murder. And this, I think, shows the reality to, there are people who believe this and they take it very seriously. Cannibalism is something that some people do take seriously, as, far-fetched and crazy as that sounds. So were there ever, hyped up versions of the Satanic Panic in the 80s? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't mean that none of this is real. And, there's plenty of, I think, examples. The Dutroux affair. I mean, you can just go on and on. Franklin cover-up. These are examples of instances where we get, I think, a picture into where this really does go on. And there's a lot of baloney out there. There's a lot of stuff, the satanic circle of the nine or whatever that, that was being promoted as a bunch of baloney. But that could even be subterfuge to cover up real crimes. We know the situation with Savile, things like this. So these are all real things. And so a long-winded answer to your question is that if you have that worldview, it doesn't just pertain to some side thing you might do on a solstice or something. It's a view that is all-encompassing about reality. And so everything is viewed in this, quote, magical way. And that would mean then that pretty much if you're an artist, a director, a producer, whatever you're involved in is viewed as an aspect of your magical working. And so the workings that you create are viewed as a means by which you attain power. And the attaining of power in this view includes the notion of doing your artwork or working your art in such a way that you influence the minds and perception of others to view you in a certain way or to transfer their time, focus, thought, energy towards you. And think of the Black Dahlia case. I know much has been written about this, but if you look at Steve Hodel and George Hodel and the idea of surrealist art and Man Ray and all that whole big long rabbit hole, that the whole idea of surrealism ties into this. You could, in other words, if you have a surrealist view of art and life, it's actually a worldview where you believe that the waking state is a dream state. You'll find this to be the case of, many of the serial killers had this notion of, I didn't know when I was awake, when I was dreaming, dissociation and so forth. And if life is a dream state, then, nothing wrong with ritual murders, right? I mean, nothing matters. It's a dream state. It doesn't really matter. It's not real. It's Maya, illusion, in Far Eastern thought. And so, you see this presented in, for example, David Lynch films. I've watched all of his movies many times over the years. I've done several in-depth analyses of his films. And you'll see, if you watch interviews with David Lynch, he talks about it. He's the head of the Transcendental Meditation. The Lynch Foundation promotes Transcendental Meditation. That ties back into the Beatles and the Tavistock Institute and things I mentioned earlier. A lot of mind control type stuff. But what you'll see is the presentation in his films is all surrealism. Now, I'm just giving this as an example. And, in interviews, he'll say, what I'm doing when I'm meditating is I'm going into the inner world, the ether, whatever, that realm of the potential, the imaginative, and I'm conjuring out of that realm and receiving impressions that I'm then going to bring into the conscious realm, the conscious state, to basically enact my subconscious, my dream realm, into the visible realm, right? And so, in other words, this is viewed as an actual magical working. And you can actually read, the works of the high-level ritual magicians and so forth, and they talk this way. So when I see the big-time directors and producers talking the exact same way as these so-called magicians, I don't doubt that there's a direct connection. And you look at things like voodoo or shamanism. That's the idea of shamanism. The shaman is a conduit for what's coming through the so-called spiritual realm, spiritual plane, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same notion, right? It always boils down to the same idea of this sort of transference of energy through symbolic ritual and action. And really a movie, you could start to see why a movie could be viewed that way. A movie is a kind of symbolic, artistic presentation of unreal events that are then made real in a way.
And even the way it's presented, you go into this dark theater and you sit there and you wait for this big, magnificent screen to turn on. It's almost like a temple, yeah.
And you go back to ancient Greece, the rise of the theater, and in ancient Greece, go back and read Sophocles and these, different playwrights, and it's 100% connected to the divine. For them, it was a religious, what's called dramaturgy, a dramatic liturgical presentation. If anybody knows about, like Catholicism or any of the Western religions, you have what's called liturgy, which is just the ritual enactment of the service. And the belief in this worldview is in a way similar insofar as the idea is that all of your life is liturgy. It's a ritual enactment.
Okay, that's fascinating. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
You know about
the one example. Sorry to interrupt, but if anyone doubts me on this, go read the Platonic dialogue Ion, ION. You can find this. It's not very long. It's a few pages. You find this easily online, publicly with different university sites. And in the dialogue Ion, Plato and Socrates has a dialogue with artists and actors, and he talks about who's a real artist, who's what's not. And there's this lengthy discussion of the Greek idea of plays and the invocation of the gods through acting. Now, I'm not saying that means that it's true or it's necessarily really happening. I'm just saying that a lot of people have this view, right? So there's a difference between an anthropological approach of looking at what people think and how they view these things, as opposed to saying, oh, this is definitely true or not true, right? I mean, if you're out there and you're agnostic or atheist or whatever you say, I don't believe in this mumbo jumbo, doesn't matter. A lot of people do, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of things, because I'm from New York, and maybe you can tell, but what do you call it? The people in the theater in New York on Broadway, they treat that as like a temple. They consider it a magical theater, an experience, a religious experience.
It is. I did an interview with a girl who she moved from New York to, I believe, England, but she's a Shakespearean actress, and she did, I think, her grad work in Shakespearean theater, and she went into great detail about this. And she was like, "Yeah, this is all for me. It's it's religious. It's ceremonial. I take it very serious."
Yeah.
And this goes back to Shakespeare as well too. And some people speculate that Shakespeare was a spy.
And you see, the Shakespeare themes are reused over and over and over again in recent movies and current movies and even TV shows and stuff.
That's interesting because you have the Globe Theater, right, and the idea in different Shakespearean plays is that we're all actors on the stage of the world or whatever. But Shakespeare, whether it was a collection of people or one guy, who knows, there's absolutely no question that it's full of all these hermetic principles and alchemical principles, which were very much in vogue in Elizabethan England. You can read the plays of or the poems of John Donne or Ben Jonson. I have plenty of analyses of all those, illustrating all this very stuff at my site. And that's Shakespeare kind of wrote the English language, at least in terms of the modern world. And so, you could see why these connections would be made. But, for those who study, particularly Western Hermeticism, Shakespeare is very important because he encoded a lot of that in his plays. And, Hollywood is a direct outworking of, the British cinema and British theater. So, you can see the parallels, obviously.
It's funny. You mentioned Steve Hodel before.
Mm-hmm.
He had swapped wives with John Huston.
Exactly. Yeah, and they were roughly in that Laurel Canyon set that Dave McGowan's book discusses at length.
Yeah, and then Steve Hodel's sister, who just recently died, by the way.
Tamar.
Yeah, Tamar. Yeah, she wound up there over at the Papa John Phillips' house, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I read Dave McGowan's book with with just total fixation. I mean, the whole book's underlined. I've got like a million notes in here. But it's a great example of ritual murder and film, right? I mean, you've got movies made about this, more than one, at least one major production, at least with Brian De Palma, and then you've got some TV versions of it. But this is a ritual murder that I think ties directly into a lot of high level people in Hollywood, and this Laurel Canyon story just goes on and on and on. I listened to the broadcast you did with Dave McGowan back in, I think, November 2014, and I thought it was a great discussion. And he was, reminding me of the whole Lookout Mountain studio.
Right.
One of the best examples of, this massive studio under the aegis of the Air Force that produced supposedly several thousand films. And, you got Jimmy Stewart, Walt Disney, Marilyn Monroe, Bob Hope. All these people have access to this top secret facility where the Atomic Energy Commission filmed the supposed atomic explosion videos. So, I mean, there's really no end to that rabbit hole either. And curiously, that facility is now owned by Jared Leto. I don't know what to make of that, but it's just interesting. But, I enjoyed that conversation you had. it's a massive secret bunker, right?
Yeah.
So that's a awesome. I can think of a better example of the stuff that I deal with than that very thing right there. Lookout Mountain Studios.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, but you mentioned again Black Dahlia. Mm-hmm. Have you done any work on the movie Pretty Woman?
No, but it's funny you said that because I get a lot of emails quite consistently, people saying, please do this movie, please do this movie. And somebody has asked me to do that, but I haven't seen it since it came out, and it's not one that's really been on my radar. But the more you do this, the more you get into it. Everything you see it again in a new light. Some dumb movie you watched 10 years ago, you watch it again, and you're like, holy shit! This is full of stuff I missed.
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you're talking about. You go back and see an old movie and says, I can't believe I missed this. This is amazing. But did you know that in the movie Pretty Woman, in that scene, at the end on the fire escape where he goes up there,
mm-hmm.
That's Black Dahlia. What's her name? Elizabeth Short.
Elizabeth Short.
That's her apartment in real life.
Wow, no, I did
That's
not.
her apartment, man. Where the window where that woman, a pretty woman, is sticking her head out. That's her apartment.
Well, there's an interesting connection between what's called noir or neo-noir film and the esoteric or the occult, which probably most people wouldn't make that connection. You think of Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler, these different writers, and then you think of Humphrey Bogart. But when you watch a lot of these films, you start to notice that they're actually hinting at and telling you quite a bit as well. So for example, there's a curious scene in the Black Dahlia film that mimics Glass Key, one of the bogey films where he discovers this secret. The general's daughter is like running off to do drugs and participate in pornography, but they couldn't really show that back, in like the 40s or 50s. It's The Big Sleep. That's what it is. 1946 film, Big Sleep. There's this scene that is directly parallel to the scene in the Black Dahlia where they're filming these, high-end, porn films and I guess snuff films or whatever. And just curious that you see this even back in the 1946 film Big Sleep. Most people probably didn't know that or hadn't paid attention to that, but there's a direct connection between those two films.
Very interesting. I got to go back and take a look at that. Okay, this might be a good time to take a break. We're with Jay Dyer. He's the author of the book Esoteric Hollywood and also the website JaysAnalysis.com. So we'll be right back after these messages with more of Jay Dyer. And now, a word from our sponsors. Pacific West Bamboo, your premier source for sustainable building material. They provide construction-grade and craft-grade bamboo material for all your indoor, outdoor, and gardening needs. Contact them for event planning and display building as well. 503-839-8926. Or you go to their new website, pacificwestbamboo.com. Or you can contact them on Facebook at Pacific West Bamboo. That's 503-8. You get full access to brand new original content, new guests, new uncensored interviews, my own investigations and reports, and we're going to be adding sections with documents, images, police reports either provided by myself or by my guests, or for my own investigations, my own reports. So you can go to oppermanreport.com and sign up there tonight and start listening tonight. Strawman. I want to mention Strawman. Strawman is a band out of Toronto, Canada. They're good friends of the Opperman Report. They're a trio of guys who share the same mindset most of us here do, and they put that energy into their words and music. So check them out at strawmanmusic.com and drop them a line to let them know that you're doing out there. We'll be doing an interview with Sean Douglas. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, by visiting my PI website, emailrevealer.com. We also offer a computer and cell phone uncover infidelity. We offer asset searches, locates, email tracing, background reports, and we can even trace your spouse's email address back to internet dating websites to catch them cheating online. You can reach us at 800-572-9762, or you can email me at emailrevealer@aol.com. New World Mexican Women. Everyone loves the New World Mexican Women. And their line of fine, handcrafted, authentic Mexican jewelry of stone mosaic and abalone stone inlay. In their first book, titled New World Mexican Women, available on Reviews.com, they teach you how to make this jewelry, and they have a collection of love letters to their men from their hometown that have immigrated to the United States to find work. They have also published a new book entitled Azuquina to the Rodeo. It's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider, and she runs away with him without telling her family. You can find the New World Mexican Women by Googling New World Mexican Women. And you can ask them about their deals on wholesaling their fine jewelry and all of the other projects that they have going on. If you'd like to have your business or website advertised here and promoted all over the world on dozens of stations every day, you just call at 800-572-9762 or email oppermanreport@gmail.com. And now back to our show. Well, not so soon. First, we're going to talk about MichiganMushrooms.net. They offer the highest quality chaga chunks available anywhere, picked fresh from healthy live trees in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, sun-dried and quickly shipped to you. They're very proud of their long-standing reputation as trusted farmers and collectors of wild, gourmet, and medicinal mushrooms. Customer service and offering high-quality products is very important to them, and they have a strict grading system that begins in the woods, and they would rather pass up a chunk that looks bad instead of passing it off to you, the customer. Additionally, they are recognized by the state of Michigan as mushroom experts. They are certified by the Department of Agriculture to sell 20 different species of mushrooms, and proof of this certification is available upon request. That is MichiganMushrooms.net or on Facebook, Michigan Mushrooms LLC. Got a brand new sponsor, The Rodeo of Doom by Miguel La Sala. The year is 2384, and Henry Fields is a down-on-his-luck adjunct professor in the architecture department at Andreas Tangen University in Los Angeles. But he has one thing going for him that others don't. He has enough of the coveted EP14 to live to be 200, if he wants to. Not that hard. When he saves a woman for certain death with a few drops of the EP14, a corrupt government agency tries to blackmail him into selling off his supply. Just when it seems like it might be a good idea, all hell breaks loose. The Rodeo of Doom was written by Miguel La Sala and edited by Margaret A. Harrell, the author of Keep This Quiet, memoir series. Now, she was also the copy editor Hunter S. Thompson's breakthrough book, Hell's Angels. More to come from this author. The Rodeo of Doom is available on Amazon.com And there's a link to the audio of Doom in the Opperman Report bookstore. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and we're here tonight with Jay Dyer, author of the book Esoteric Hollywood, and also the website JaysAnalysis.com. Jay, earlier we were talking about voodoo and shamans and stuff like that. Just recently I had a guest on the show called Brendy Richards, and she's from South Africa. And she was describing about how, you know, the new government down there, the ANC, they made these witch doctors and these voodoo doctors, they made them official doctors down there. They gave them honorary official doctor degrees. And, you know, they can write doctor's notes and all kinds of stuff. They can diagnose people legally. And one of the things they do is, you know, they have these concoctions of animal blood and brain and bone, and even human blood. And human, they do human decapitations down there, and they include the human blood and human brain in this concoction. And one of the people who went down there and participated in one of these ceremonies was Michael Jackson. Have you heard about that?
I have, yes.
You have? Okay, what do you know about that?
Well, I mean, I'm not like an authority on Michael Jackson. I have Bugangiari or whatever her name is, Tabarelli, I forget the guy's name, but that biography on Michael Jackson,
right.
I've read a good bit of. You know, I followed Jackson here and there, but you know, I don't really know the total provenance of his interest in the occult or esoteric, but there's definitely something to it, given his fascinations with Pan and Peter Pan, and you know, him thinking that, I believe he thought he was kind of like an incarnation of Mercury, and he had paintings commissioned of him as like Apollo or Mercury, or I can't recall, but you know, I'm glad you mentioned the situation in places like Africa, or you can look at Haiti or the
right.
Congo. You look at Papa Doc Duvalier, right? I mean, this is an openly Vodun president. And, you know, he was the leader of Haiti for many years. And his son, I believe now, is the president and is also openly Vodun. What's also curious is the picture of Papa Doc Duvalier hanging out with Jay Rockefeller.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just Google that. You can find that. Comes up pretty easy. But I've always found that curious. So that's relevant because that shows the reality of, you know, the intersection between the occult and the state. May not be something that we think of as a norm in the Western world, but in a lot of the world, that still is the norm. So it's a great example. I'm really glad you brought that up. And actually, if you watch the film Live and Let Die, which is faithful to the Ian Fleming novel, you will find Baron Samedi, who is an actual, what do they call him, Obey or Veve, that's invoked in Vodun and in Haiti, the Congo. You'll find Baron Samedi figures prominently into Fleming's novel because he wrote it based on experiences that he got traveling there, as well as firsthand accounts from different international authorities where he was looking at the illegal drug and gold trade back in the 60s and 70s. So really fascinating stuff. But if you watch that movie Live and Let Die with Roger Moore, it's kind of cheesy, but as all the Roger Moore Bonds are, you'll find that there's actually quite a bit that's true in that, where there's actually human sacrifice that's going to happen. Bond, of course, thwarts it. But yeah, you've got Voduns, you've got Baron Samedi, you've got tarot cards, you've got all of that in Live or Let Die, just to bring it back to Bond.
Yeah, are you aware of anything about the Clintons going down to Haiti and doing rituals down there?
I know that Hillary has flirted here and there with being blessed by Native American spiritists. I know she's made some other New Agey type statements, but as for that, no, I hadn't heard that. However, interestingly enough, curious synchronicity, it makes me think of the Umberto Eco novel Foucault's Pendulum, which is a pretty famous novel, bestseller, the last, 15 years or so. And in that novel, you have the treatment of elites who actually do go and participate in quite a few voodoo ceremonies. And Umberto Eco is no small player. He's curiously also a bondologist. He wrote the first critical essay that would actually move Ian Fleming into the ranks of being considered an actual good writer, not just a pulp writer. So you had this famous essay by Umberto Eco, who I should mention, he's an Italian author and semiotician. Semiotics is the study of signs and symbols. He just passed away today, apparently.
Oh, really?
And Eco wrote a novel where you have elites participating in voodoo. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
That same novel is also full of Kabbalistic thought as well.
What about, now, a couple of things about back to Africa again. There's an episode, too, of Amazing Race where they made the contestants drink that stuff as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. But one more thing is that, what do you know about Steven Spielberg going down there and doing one of these, witnessing one of these ceremonies?
Well, the story I heard was that, Jacko thought Spielberg put a curse in him. And then Jacko turned around and, I don't know I'm just saying what I remember reading, maybe 10 years ago.
Right.
And then Jacko hired a voodoo priestess to, I think, sacrifice a red herring or a bull or something like that to counter the effects. I don't know. I have no idea if that's true or not. I've heard that story, but
right.
I wouldn't be surprised because a lot of people who do get interested in esoteric occult stuff, what they do is they go try these different cult groups, or they read about Golden Dawn or Crowley and that kind of stuff, and then they start to realize, maybe the ancient true spiritism is animism, right? And so a lot of people go from that stuff into just straight up voodoo and animism. And so I could see the direct connect there, and that's where you would get into the human sacrifice component for sure. It made me think I was going to tell you about there's a movie with Martin Sheen.
Right, I was going to ask about The Believers, yeah.
Believers. I was going to say The Believers. The Skeleton Key with, what's her face? Blonde chick. Kate Hudson. There's Serpent in the Rainbow. These are interesting. Angel Heart with Robert De Niro.
That's right.
Interesting voodoo-themed movies, which I actually will be doing a show on pretty soon. But, a lot of these occult magician types, Crowley, they're borrowing from these kinds of ancient practices. So you could see why they would, Crowley talks about, I think, removing the heart and eating the heart and stuff like that. And that's straight out of voodoo. So,
yeah, Idi Amin supposedly killed one of his enemies and ate his heart.
Yeah, I watched a documentary on Liberia, and this goes on in Liberia now. When the warlord defeats his enemy, whoever, they eat the heart, and this is just considered, the normative practice.
So now, what do you think? Do you think they get power from this? That there's power in this blood sacrifice?
Well, I would say, yeah. You call me superstitious, but I do believe in the reality of the spiritual realm. I do believe God exists, and I think that there is something to this, or you wouldn't be something that's a perennial practice of the nations. And there's one reason I think that the Bible, for example, forbids doing it is just because it leads to such a degeneracy. It's an idolatrous practice, but it's also harmful to the social order. But some people do take it serious, and you have biblical stories where this is going on. So I guess depends on what your worldview is. But yeah, I would say that it does. I don't think that it ultimately gives a person satisfaction or fulfillment or anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't grant some sort of temporal
right.
spate of power, perhaps. I certainly think that that's a possibility.
Yeah, especially when you look at, we were talking off the air about the West Memphis 3 and Eccles. Mm-hmm. I believe that whatever ritual he did, with the original murders, and then whatever he's doing now, he's gotten this ability to lie to people and get them to believe his lies, and also to get other people to lie for him. And there's another theory I have too, that he's telling people that he's a reincarnation or an offspring of Crowley, because he does look a lot like Crowley. I don't know if you ever saw his younger pictures, but he does look like a young Crowley. What do you make of that?
I mean, I've seen a few documentaries, read a few articles. I certainly wouldn't call myself any kind of authority on that case. I mean, I've heard some shows, the shows you've done. It does look like that guy's in the occult. But I don't really consider myself really knowledgeable enough on the whole thing to comment with any relevance. But certainly, if he is involved in the occult, it would suggest that he's taking the human sacrifice aspect of it seriously in terms of like the Crowleyan stuff.
Yeah, it seems to me that he has some followers that are definitely occultists as well, equal to him. They're full blown. Right. They're in this. But then you have another bunch that are just this naive, gullible bunch that just believe it. But they're willing to lie for him, and there's this undercurrent between the whole bunch of these followers of this arrogance, this rudeness, this insulting nature. I've never seen. Well, I can't say I've never seen anything like it before, but it's unique to that group and to other certain groups that again touches on the same kind of a cult. There's a certain attitude that it breeds in these groups.
Well, I've been to the site where back when I was in high school is when the Murray vampire killers of Murray, Kentucky, when they had their spate of, I think they killed 2 or 3 people, but Rod Farrell and his girlfriend, that was a big deal. When I was in high school, everybody knew about the ritual murder that happened. But that's another case of something similar to what you're describing with the West Memphis 3, where you have this kind of homegrown, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it was a homegrown organic thing, or if the guy was, maybe had other people higher level directing him. I don't know. But, Rod Farrell obviously took it seriously. He was reading Crowley, he was reading LaVey and so forth. And, he thought he was some sort of reincarnated vampire. He thought he couldn't die. And, he took the killing seriously. And, I've seen enough people messed up on drugs, LSD. A lot of times people who are involved in ritual magic and the occult, they will, a lot of them will take drugs, LSD, to enhance the, perceived spiritual perception, I guess you could say, of the spiritual realm. And I think that, I've seen enough people. I've never been involved in anything occult or anything like that, but I'm saying, back when I was a teenager, you go out, people that are partying or whatnot. I've seen enough people get messed up that, I've seen other things take over where that person was no longer there and something else was running that machine.
Yeah, right.
And that to me would suggest the reality of, of possession. And I think that that's what you're seeing in these, obviously not in every case, but in the case of these people like Rod Farrell, I think they really are possessed by a spirit that, fools them into believing that they have powers, that they're immortal. Well, obviously Rod Farrell's not immortal. He's going to die, right? So, that's. I just always go back to a lot of. It's not popular, I guess, in the modern world to talk about the Bible, but the Bible talks about a lot of this. The Bible talks about Lucifer as a con artist, and that's what he does. He comes as an angel of light and tells you that you're going to get power, you're going to get immortality, and it's a con, it's a ruse, and that's kind of what the devil's known for. But even if you don't believe in the devil, a lot of people take it serious, and that's really kind of the point I've been trying to drive home. Yeah,
I'm a Christian, and a lot of my audience is Christian. They have no problem, you don't have to worry about say that stuff. No one's offended here by that kind of stuff. But it's amazing too. You can't talk about this in many churches. They don't even want to go near any of this kind of topic,
I got a question for you, Ed.
Go ahead.
Another Tennessee case. Did you follow any of the Holly Bobo case?
Holly Bobo, remind me. Yes, I did. Yes. Okay.
Well, there was so many oddities and weirdness around that it almost looked like it was kind of a human trafficking kind of thing. And then supposedly they found her skull, severed from the body, and I mean, that to me seems so strange. That was another big one here in Tennessee. I just wondered if you had any input on that. To me, it sounded. I mean, I don't know because I didn't really dive into it or follow it intently. But to me, it kind of had earmarks, I guess, of what sounded like ritual murder or at least human trafficking.
Well, yeah, there's a lot in that. It's not fresh on my mind at the moment, but I recall that like there was a drug gang, that was of brothers and cousins and stuff like that. That was notorious down there. That everyone was afraid of them. And even when they arrested a couple of these guys, wasn't parts of the body found like in a creek right by their house and stuff? It's like one of those cases where it's like, well, the cops know who did it, but they're afraid to go after them.
Yeah, and there were a lot of high level officials involved in the case, which is curious too. And I always wonder, maybe you, given your profession, might have some insight on this. Why is it that the mass media? I know that part of it's ratings, but I also think there's some sort of psychological warfare aspect to it as to why certain murders or stories are chosen to be the only thing that the whole nation is going to talk about for a month or two or three. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Why is it that case? Why are we talking about Natalie? I mean, there's plenty of people who've been killed, but we're talking about Natalie Holloway for months, right?
Right, and I know some of these people, producers who work for these, the big ones, like Top Mom. Like I know people, very well connected to them, and I don't think that I think they're naive, whatever their involvement is in perpetuating these big stories. I think they're out of the loop. They're definitely not in on the bigger picture, and they're just kind of they're kind of not bright people, is what I'm finding. A lot of these people in the media.
Well, could there be people in the background is what I wonder, because, like you see these, I'm sure you've seen the Conan clip of, like the local news people all reading the exact same script, which I assume is, coming from some central locale, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I've been covering the elections, and when you show up down there at these rallies and stuff like that, I was just covering the Battleborn dinner last night with both Bernie and Hillary were there. When you show up, they give you a handout. You give you a piece of paper. This is what you're supposed to report tonight, and everyone seems to go along with it. And they're a bunch of lazy
points, basically.
Yeah, and all the reporters are very, very lazy people. They're not very interested in finding anything out. They're just kind of happy to just be there and type into their little laptops whatever they're told to do.
Well, you go back to the founding of the big three networks, and that's all a bunch of people that work for OSS.
Yeah.
RKO Pictures, that was started by Kennedy Sr., and then it was taken over by the Rockefellers.
Yeah, now you got Fox, Rupert Murdoch running everything. But now we were talking about the Believers.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now I've heard that that's an important film to these occultists. What do you know about that?
Well, I mean, I suppose there's some movies, like certain occult groups will list, like you need to see this movie, we like this, we approve it, or whatever. It's news to me that if that is like a important film per se, but I do think it shows a lot of insights, which is kind of what I focus on, and what you see there is Martin Sheen's playing this character whose family actually is wrapped up in this elite cult, and the billionaire, whatever guy, runs the cult, and it's voodoo, and they take it very seriously, and then they even utilize ritual murder under the cover of a runaway and drug treatment program, which actually reminds me of Franklin cover-up, right, with Boys Town. Shipping the boys to the White House, and even worse nefarious things with Larry King, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of a parallel to the Franklin cover-up in the film The Believers, but yeah, that's another one that's very insightful. There's a B movie too that's along the same lines called Society, and it deals with the exact same themes.
Because what I heard was you're familiar with Matamoros, Mexico, that big case on there.
Is this like MS-13, the cartels, where they kind of ritual kills? That what you're talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't cartels. It was a drug gang down in Matamoros, Mexico. It was an occult drug gang, and and they got caught because they killed two American college kids. But they had been killing people down there for a long time. It was
Were they to Santa Muerte?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And what I heard was those guys were all into that movie, The Believers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And, they made a remake. They made a movie, and it's almost impossible to get this movie. Rosie Perez is in it, and it's usually in Spanish only, and it's about Matamoros. It's a really, really have you ever seen that movie?
Which one again?
Okay, I don't know the name of it. It's either called Running with the Devil or Dancing with the Devil, something like that, and has a Spanish name to it. Even though I've seen it in English, there's a Spanish version you can find on Putlocker and stuff. Rosie Perez is in it, and some Mexican actor who's not from America. He's from South America someplace, and no other big stars at all. But Rosie Perez is in it. She looks really freaky in it too, and it's all about Matamoros. You know what I'm?
Okay, I got you now. No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
It reminds me, though. It sounds kind of like was the Tony Scott film with Denzel Washington,
right?
Out of Time. I can't remember the name of it, but that is also a human trafficking Santa Muerte cult as well. Man on Fire. That's it.
Right.
So actually, it's interesting. A lot of films will deal with this reality that you're talking about, and there's a good. I think it's one of the military intelligence document that I have cited in one of my articles. That is a pretty lengthy treatment of the MS-13 in Santa Muerte. I'd have to dig to find it. I don't recall off the top of my head, but yeah, all that's real. And that, by the way, comes up briefly in the new film Sicario, where you have Emily Blunt being this kind of naive FBI girl who's all, pro-America. And then she realizes that the elite attaché unit, that she's an attaché to this elite unit of special forces guys that is actually helping out one of the cartels.
Yeah, right.
So, and there's some references to Santa Muerte and MS-13 in that as well.
Yeah. Now, have you looked into any of Maury Terry's work with Son of Sam and all that?
I've read Ultimate Evil. Yeah.
So what do you make of that?
I don't doubt that that those are real ritual killings. Some of these cases, I'm sure as you know, like the West Memphis 3, you kind of have to take a year to read all the relevant material to be up on the ball. But I've read some books on Zodiac and Berkowitz and all that. But just kind of in a cursory treatment, a book here and there. I read Terry, I've read Peter Levinda's books, and I don't doubt that there's a real component to that. I think some of the analysis that Terry does of the Twilight language or synchronicities is a little fuzzy. It's a little hard to substantiate some of that. I think he's kind of reaching in some places there, but he's definitely onto something.
Oh yeah, but why don't you think there's ever been a movie ever about Son of Sam that even touches on this cult aspect, or the satanic cult aspect? None of it ever.
Well, wasn't there one with didn't John Leguizamo and he in a Son of Sam?
Yeah, that doesn't touch on any cult stuff at all.
I was trying to remember it. Yeah. It's been a long time since I watched that.
Yeah, that was a Spike Lee movie.
Okay.
Yeah, with John Leguizamo and also that other guy from Christopher from The Sopranos. He's in it too.
Okay.
But they don't touch on the occult stuff at all in there. They say he's a crazy guy that heard the dog talking.
Huh. Wasn't one of the big senators, Feinstein or Boxer, didn't they pardon or do something for the what's the guy out in California, the
the Zodiac?
No, not the Zodiac, the other one, Richard Ramirez.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of them tried to give him a pardon or tried to lighten his sentence or something like that.
Oh, really? I had this woman on the show, Benetsky, who was on my show, who was a pen pal with Ramirez. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, she used to talk to him on the phone almost daily. And it was really weird. It's in the member section. He would say to her, "Tell me what's on your refrigerator. Tell me what's on your wall. Tell me what's in your refrigerator." What's in your cabinets? Walk around your kitchen. Tell me what's inside. What's on the stove right now. That's what he would want to talk about from the payphone in prison.
What do you make of that?
I don't know. But I asked her, did you ever ask him about the occult significance, of his crimes? And she says, oh, yeah, he admitted it all, that it was, but he was just very nonchalant about that part. Oh, yeah, it was in service to Satan. Yeah, well, how to do these rituals, it had to be done, that kind of stuff.
Interesting. I read, too, about Richard Chase, the Sacramento vampire, and,
right.
His story reads like possession as well, in my opinion. I don't know if you've looked at that one very much.
Yeah, I had a guest on who did that. Kevin Sullivan. He did the Bundy book, and he also did a book about the Chase, the vampire guy. You know what? And he describes, too, in his book and on the show, a very weird experience. He had like a supernatural experience when he first showed up there to start working on the book. I forget what it was, but it was something very, very odd that really moved him a lot. Because he talked about it a lot, So it was something that really freaked him out. But back again to that story with Kelly Banansky and Richard Ramirez, because the reason why I invited her on my show is because she had a neighbor who was into the occult, and he was a Satanist, and he was fascinated with Ramirez. So when she would get a letter from Ramirez, he would say, let me see the envelope, and he would lick the envelope where Ramirez had licked it. Says, I licked, the same saliva that he has. He was really into that. No, but wait, it gets better, man. Yeah, we get it. Yeah, this guy, he didn't have a car, so he got a ride to the liquor store with a friend of his, some girl. They pick up some drunk woman who ran away from her family. She had 6 kids, and she was an alcoholic. She was just wandering the country. They picked her up at the liquor store, took her back to he was living in the garage at his parents' house. The girl that gives him a ride, she takes off and leaves. He kills this woman in his parents' garage where he was living. Eats part of her, has sex with the dead body, and then there's blood everywhere. He's walking in and out of the house covered in blood, going to the bathroom, cleaning up, chopping up this body, and taking it out to the backyard, burning it in a fire pit. Now, the only reason he got caught is because he had a friend that was a neighbor and says, hey, you know how we always talked about capturing somebody and killing them and put them in the fire pit? I just did it. Come on over and look. And the neighbor turned him in. But his parents never got arrested. This guy's walking in and out of there with a dead with body parts.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I don't even know what to say. I did an analysis that makes me think of True Detective season 1.
Yeah.
And I did an analysis of that, and that is actually based on a real Louisiana church that was directly involved in a Crowleyan flavored occult thing where they were involved in human trafficking and underage pedo stuff, as well as sex. You can find that in my True Detective analysis, season 1. But that's another example, right? And they're using this evangelical church as a front, which we saw in the Franklin situation as well, if I recall. Boys Town is a Catholic thing, but I think it tied into. So didn't it tie into other so-called right-wing things as well? I can't recall.
I can't tell you exactly. Well, that guy Lawrence King was very hooked up politically with
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I've had a lot of those guys on the show.
Yeah, what you're seeing in True Detective is real as well, right? I mean,
yeah, I hunted down those detectives down there in Louisiana, and I tried to get them to come. Oh yeah, I tried to get them to come on the show. They wouldn't come on and talk about it. I've hunted down a lot of people. The guy who investigated I'll never remember the case now. It was in Stanford. I'll never remember. But that's in the Son of Sam book too. That David Berkowitz admitted that the cult was involved in that.
Oh, it's a girl's name, Arliss Perry.
Arliss Perry. There you go. Yeah. I hunted down that detective too. He won't come on either. But interesting that her husband, now he's a psychologist, a psychiatrist. And he treated the kids who survived Waco.
Huh.
Yeah, he's involved in all, and he denies there's any kind of occult involvement in his wife's murder.
Interesting.
Oh boy. So, yeah, I know, man. Well, what else jumps out at you? What do you want to share with us? Anything? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and that thing with the original one.
Yeah.
that's like full of stuff, right?
That's curious because, you've got, again, it's written by Roald Dahl, who was part of Special Operations Executive, the high-level British Black Operations Covert Ops PSYOPs, working with Ian Fleming and others, and then he decides he wants to write children's fiction, I guess, direct from one world to the other. And what you see there is a lot. I didn't think that there was. I wouldn't have thought that this would be as full of crazy stuff as it is, because I hadn't seen this since I was in high school. I turned it on recently, and I was just kind of like, "Whoa!" I was blown away at how traumatic it is. He takes these kids into this operation that he's got going, and he kind of represents kind of monopolistic capitalism. And, he has no qualms using them all in kind of an experimentation. They're all commodities. They're dispensable, disposable. He has all this legality where they've all sort of signed their rights over to see his secrets or whatever. And, what's he doing? Well, he's genetically modifying the food. He's like throwing boots into vats, and he's saying that you're all going to eat garbage, right? It's GMO stuff. I think the most traumatic scene is at the beginning when they take the chocolate ferry ride, and it's kind of like an LSD trip, and there's all this psychedelic stuff going on, and then in the background what you see is a bunch of images of death. So it's just really insane. And I think it kind of represents, on one level, like I said, it's a social-political commentary on global monopolistic capitalism kind of creating class warfare and making people into commodities. And then I think on a deeper level, Roald Dahl is telling you about Tavistock Institute. This is the kind of stuff that they would do. They're kind of the formative precursor to MK Ultra program, which was ultimately a military operation, try to find a truth serum. And so that's how you get this whole biochemical aspect to it, when the LSD and all that with Tim Leary. This is, Aldous Huxley's promoting all this. It's right out of the same British establishment. And that's what I titled my talk on it, Charlie's Trauma Factory, Willy Wonka's Trauma Factory, right? Because that's what it's about. But I really think it's a commentary on the modern world as a whole. And Roald Dahl's telling you exactly how the world works. It's not a kid's book.
Yeah, right. It's funny because you mentioned a lot of people talk about how, everyone knows about LSD and it was, CIA and Timothy Leary. But I just found out recently that the psilocybin mushrooms as well, those come out of a lab. The ones here in the United States that grow freely and wild in the Northwest come out from a lab. Those are from a laboratory sample. And where they originate from in Europe, they're only found like under dead logs. But here in the United States, they'll grow in wood chips. They grow everywhere. Mm-hmm. So they all showed up at a strange time too. So it's a plant as well as the LSD was a plant.
Oh yeah, then that's covered in John Marx's book, Search for the Manchurian Candidate, which I think is kind of a watered down book. But I said there's a lot of good information in that book still, and he treats the whole history of psilocybin as well through Gordon Wasson, who was the J.P. Morgan executive who, with his wife, traveled down, south of the American border to try to find all these different hallucinogens. And, he was promoted in Time magazine, his LSD work. But he didn't just, work with these ergots. He was also formative in psilocybin as well. So there's a curious subcurrent with the whole techno rave culture and the rise of all that out of, I guess, new wave and Britpop, which McGowan argues was also kind of a CIA thing. And so I've known some medium profile, not high profile, medium profile DJs, and they'll talk about this openly. Like, oh yeah, we go to a big rave, and you certain people involved with certain mobs, certain groups, and they bring in the drugs to the raves under government approval. So there's a whole curious intelligence and drug connection to the techno rave electronica scene as well.
That's interesting because, we were talking before about Heidi Fleiss. Mm-hmm. And if you ever watched the movie by Nick Broomfield, they talk about that guy Cookie. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, he was arrested later on he was running a huge ecstasy ring, importing ecstasy from Israel into the United States. Mm-hmm. And he was like one of the hugest traffickers of ecstasy in the country.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. The whole drug trade is a big aspect, a big piece of this, quote, New World Order puzzle. And I really, Daniel Estlin has a book on this, Shadow Masters, and where he talks about how, the drug trade is actually a big part of what keeps the American economy going.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had Daniel on the show.
Don't know that.
Oh, yeah. I had Daniel on the show. We were talking about the Bilderbergs, but I should have him come back about that. Very interesting. Someone in the chat room was asking about Shirley Temple. What do you know about that? You've looked at that?
Good question. I don't. I know about. What's the Wizard of Oz? What's her name?
Forget that one. Yeah,
that's probably one.
Judy Garland. What do you know about that? Yeah, that's Wizard of Oz. My God. Yeah.
That's a total mind control movie, and then she's right there being, the story is that she was dosed with painkillers, all the time by the studios. Basically had to live at the studio. So, there's this whole side of, it gets exaggerated in alternative conspiracy stuff, the idea of the handlers in Hollywood and all that. It's somewhat exaggerated, but it's also very real. You read about Marilyn Monroe, and she was kind of under house arrest and couldn't leave her house. She was under handlers. So it's for, I think, a lot of the big level people, it's very real.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's kind of exaggerated, on the internet. But that's very real. I think the treatment centers as kind of fronts is also very real.
Oh, yeah.
All that kind of stuff is legit.
Well, and then you have
Shirley Temple. If anybody has any insights on that would be news to me.
Yeah, that would be something good to look into. But, Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli, she married a homosexual Satanist who was best friends with Michael Jackson.
Who's this?
Liza Minnelli.
Right. Who is it?
Hey, if somebody in the chat room can look it up. That guy Liza Minnelli married he was a theater producer in New York City. And what do you call it? And he was best friends with Michael Jackson, too. I don't remember his name. And you just look at this guy. There's no way these two ever had any kind of sex or anything. What their relationship was, who knows? Now, what about...
I don't know. I don't blame him. Maybe young Liza Minnelli. I don't know if I'd want to...
Oh, my God. Can you imagine?
I always think of that character in Arrested Development where she's got vertigo and she's always falling down.
Very weird, too, because she was on The Apprentice, too. She did a scene in The Celebrity Apprentice. And Trump,
You're fired.
Yeah, I wish. And Trump is blowing kisses at her while she's singing, and she sounded horrible.
What do you think about the Trump campaign? It cracks me up when he's like, we got a great campaign. It's great, It's wonderful. We got great people. It's going to be good. We're going to make America great again. There's like no substance other than all these cut downs. It's like a cut down war.
It's really scary. But the guy is David Guest, who Liza Minnelli married.
That's it, yeah. Every time I know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they too. Someone in the chat room was mentioning, too. Remember how Michael Jackson's mother disappeared and then wound up down there at Canyon Ranch in Tucson? During all that stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, there's an interesting chapter on Jacko in... my friend Jamie Hanshaw has a book, Hollywood Mind Control, and she wrote a whole chapter on Michael Jackson in that book, which is really good. Worth checking out.
Oh, see if you can get her to come on my show.
Okay. Sure.
That sounds good. Hollywood Mind Control. Speaking of Hollywood Mind Control, what do you know about Britney Spears?
I know a little bit more about her. So one of the most curious things about her is the time that she spent supposedly dating this military intelligence guy.
Oh.
And then he ended up dying recently. I only think they dated a few years, but
Sam Lufty?
This is probably back in the 2000s at some point. But anyway, this guy ended up supposedly recently dying in Afghanistan.
Sam Lufty?
Huh?
Sam Lufty?
I could Google it.
He was her manager, and they were dating.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Sam Lufty, he's dead now? Because he was handling Courtney Love too.
Britney Spears' ex pilot boyfriend John Sundal has been killed.
Different guy, okay.
But this is like some big, Black Ops guy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then you had that case with those Olsen twins when that guy died. Keith Ledger died. They had Blackwater response team run over there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of these too. The whole Star Whacker stuff. That's all. There's some truth to that too.
Oh, you think so? Yeah. A lot of those deaths are weird. And what do you make about the theory that
some of them are fake. Some of them are faked, I think. By the way,
a lot of crazy. Oh, fake deaths. They're not really dead.
Not all of them. I'm saying I think some of them are simply because of the monetary value that you get from that propaganda.
Right.
And who is the CIA's done this for a long time, staging deaths. There's movies about this too, right? There's Body Doubles. This is a classic CIA thing as well. I don't know in what cases this happens. I'm just saying that it's real and it does happen. It would probably be near impossible to prove any of this kind of stuff just because, how would you ever prove it? And, this CIA has been doing this for decades. So, but I mean, you have guys who specialize in this. So there was actually a banker a couple years ago who got caught staging his death. And it was because he owed a bunch of money. So, I mean, if normal people can pull this off or almost pull it off, you better bet the CIA does it.
Yeah, that's true. There's no reason why they wouldn't have that ability, and be set up for that, just in case.
A lot of things are commodified, too, like time on TV, right? Like interview with Obama.
Yeah.
That's worth a certain amount of money. That's why Trump's always talking about, if I'm on this debate, it's worth immediately $4 million, okay? Right? If I'm not here, you're losing $4 million. But it's the same way with a death, right? I'm not saying that I know for sure that I'm not saying Bowie didn't die. I'm just saying if you think about he supposedly dies on his birthday, and now his album is like the #1 album. I mean, there's a lot of money in that.
Yeah, David Bowie. Yeah, that seems all too well planned out. Yeah, that's way too bizarre.
I mean, there's no way to prove that. I have no way to prove that. I'm just saying it is bizarre, at least.
Now, William Ramsey did a lot of work on the occult stuff in his last videos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I did turn up some articles that discussed. Bowie had these lyrics for a long time. I'm closer to the golden dawn. He's talking about the golden dawn and wearing Crowley's robes or whatever he says. So he definitely had an affinity for those things, and he had a big part of. I should mention this too. A big part of the occult and the esoteric is stagecraft, and you've talked about Michael Aquino in interviews that you've done before, or guests have, and he has a whole book on this where he talks about the connection between black magic and stagecraft. So that's what I'm saying is that's another example of Hollywood bridging this gap between reality and fiction and psyops and perception management.
Yeah, it's overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
What do you? I asked you off the air, but Sean Duff, one of my producers, wanted me to ask you about the Mandela effect, and what do you think about that?
Well, named after the supposed death of Nelson Mandela, and if you read Stephen Dorrell's book on MI6, which is this big, fat, massive, excellent tome, he talks about Nelson Mandela being a British asset. So Nelson Mandela was actually working for MI6, and that would lead me to believe that whatever subterfuge I'm seeing with Nelson Mandela is at the behest of British psyops experts. It's probably not real. And so if there's a supposed memory that people have of Nelson Mandela dying at some point and then he's still alive, I would probably chalk it up to some sort of staged news event or British psyops before I would chalk it up to some quantum entanglement.
Well, I can't imagine that because I've always been watching Mandela my whole life, and I can't imagine that if he would have died, I wouldn't have known about it. It was a big event. I can't believe it happened twice. And I've read through some of those lists of things that are part of the Mandela effect, and some of them are just totally ridiculous.
They are ridiculous. The only one that's weird is the Berenstain Bears. That one, I can't. There's probably some explanation for it. I don't know. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on it, but that one is a little weird.
That one certainly is weird. Yeah, because like I said to you before, we were really into that book when I had a girlfriend. She had 2 little kids, and we read that book a million times.
Yeah, I grew up with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up with it too. It was one of my favorite books. Now that I think about it, Oh, my God. Listen, we're getting toward the end. We got like 11 minutes left. What have I not asked you about that you think I should be?
Oh, well, let's see here. I got, hundreds of articles and reviews. Let's see. How about, did you ever watch the show The Prisoner?
No, I'm familiar with it, though. Yeah, but it's very, very odd. Yeah, go ahead.
You should watch that. It's a very philosophical presentation of British intelligence that actually mixes spycraft, science fiction, and the esoteric of all things. But if you haven't seen it, it probably won't be worth talking about. But you should check that out sometime. There's some really curious, deep stuff in there that I pull out. But we talked about Hitchcock, we talked about Bond and all that kind of stuff. But I do a lot of analyses of kind of newer comic booky type movies, because even though you might think that comic book movies are stupid, they actually have a lot of this same type of stuff in it. For example, in this new Avengers film, you had the Avengers film and the Captain America Winter Soldier. What you have there is the presentation of AI and mass surveillance. And not just AI and mass surveillance, but actually the idea of predictive algorithms that would give you a kind of pre-crime, right? So you could figure out who, Minority Report, Philip K. Dick style, who's going to be the future threat. And this is kind of the kind of stuff that the Pentagon, the military, actually does do. They really do have AI programs that deal with what they call simulant world operations, where they will war game real-time, real-world scenarios on a mass scale. And there are white papers on this. This is not made-up science fiction. It's actually real, even though it was in Isaac Asimov books back in 40s or 50s. Foundation series talks about the idea of predictive algorithms based on mass tracking. And you see this come up in these new Marvel blockbuster Avenger films, right? And this is what they're all about. It's all about AI, transhumanism. So I deal with that a lot too. I've got numerous science fiction film analyses that talk about kind of the reality between, or the bridge between, reality and fiction, particularly in the sci-fi tech arena. So I write quite a bit about transhumanism.
Okay, let me think. Because while I got you here, there's so many, so many different movies I could ask you about. What about this new movie, MK America?
Yeah, I did an analysis of that. American Ultra, that one?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, American Ultra, yeah.
Yeah, what I thought was curious about this was it kind of give it this cool, MK Ultra, that was cool. And it always plays up on this same old line of the idea that MK Ultra was all about alternate personas, trigger words, and assassins.
Right.
And that's not what it's about. That was an aspect of maybe one of the sub-projects, which we don't actually know for sure if it was. But because half of the boxes were destroyed by, I believe, Richard Helms. But what it's really about is mass social engineering. That's what MK Ultra is really about. And so the entirety of pop culture, I believe, is pretty much under the aegis of MK Ultra. That's what it's really about. It's about the combination of bio warfare, LSD, the drug culture, the drug subculture, counterculture, combined with the pop culture. And that's why you see so many of the pop stars, that's their whole message is all about this crap. And, I illustrate all this in my analysis of the film. It's a mainstreaming of it, I guess you could say. And the idea is really about, the film is really about the fact that the two teenagers that you're seeing, the Jesse Eisenberg and Kristen Stewart characters, are just representatives of the millennial generation. And they're pretty much complete mind control. completely under my control. Right? I mean, it didn't end the apology that we got. When Clinton apologized for MK Ultra, those programs didn't end. MK Ultra was moved to Fort Detrick and changed to MK Search, and all of these programs continued on. It became directly under the Department of Energy, biowarfare type stuff, and you can trace all that in John Marks's book. So that's what we're dealing with this film is a comical, fictional presentation of something that's very real, but is not about trigger words and assassins. It's about pop culture, social engineering.
Have you looked into any kids' cartoons?
I have. I'm familiar with a lot of what's going on there, but I've not treated that extensively at my site. But if you go back and watch G.I. Joe, that's one of the best. They were talking about weather control, like back in 1983 or 84 in the G.I. Joe episodes. So those are 100% packed with everything that we've been discussing, as well as episodes on the occult. There's a Destro, his family is a Scottish bloodline that worships some sort of entity, and they practice human sacrifice. That's in G.I. Joe, believe it or not.
No, I believe it. Back in the 80s, it was 100 times worse. The kids' cartoons today they're not in your face as much as it used to be back in the 80s.
Yeah, except for a lot of the Disney and Cartoon Network stuff, but that's kind of geared towards an older audience. But a lot of the Disney stuff is pretty overt. And, that's just, I view Disney as kind of an arm of the Pentagon military industrial entertainment complex. They're all about this stuff. You look at the Siemens Corporation, their relationship to Disney, all the tech mind control stuff that they're involved in. And it becomes pretty obvious. This is why the Department of Defense was involved in installing, biometric scanning at Disney World and all this. Mm-hmm. It's one big, mind control experiment, really.
Yeah, Disney has one of the greatest databases of face and name to email that exists in the world, because they have a thing in there you can go in and take a picture of yourself and then email it to yourself. They got your face, your name.
They're also a city-state with their own...
forget that.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't believe that. They don't, that it has its own kind of constitution. But,
yeah. Now, there's a toy they sell, because I watch Adult Swim sometimes. The next, in the morning when the regular cartoons start, there's a toy they sell that's a little Mayan pyramid where they're shooting flames at these little lizard people running up the Mayan pyramid. Yeah, it's mind blowing what's going on.
Yeah, I mentioned Jamie Hanschel earlier. Her book, she has 3 books now, and in the first 2 books, she treats children's toys.
Oh, really?
And the actual, the actual strategy and programs behind not just the cartoons but also the toys, and that's all very real too.
Okay, you got to get me both of those guests.
Absolutely.
All right, we're toward the end of the show. Jay Dyer, thank you so much. JaysAnalysis.com and the book Esoteric Hollywood. It's not available yet. When's it going to come out?
It's June of 2016, and if I could, I'd also like to add that what I offer in my subscription service isn't just podcasts and talks. I also do a lot of philosophy lectures.
Okay.
So if you're interested in kind of getting a groundwork in the history of Western philosophy, I work from Plato and Aristotle and kind of the classics.
Yeah, one of the chatters was saying that she likes your philosophy classes there.
Cool.
Jay, thank you so much, brother.
Absolutely, it was a blast.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go to the after show, and remember, we got to reboot at the after show, I just want to remind everybody, because we're on a couple of stations that we're going to be dropping right now. We're going to be dropping PSN and a couple other ones. But the thing is if you live in Nevada, tomorrow is Caucus Day, 11 a.m., February 20th, Saturday afternoon, 11 a.m. You got to be there by 11 a.m., otherwise they lock the doors and they don't let you in. So if you are going to caucus for Bernie, you got to be there tomorrow at 11 a.m., February 20th. If you're caucusing for Hillary, it's the next day. It's Sunday. You come back on Sunday. Don't come tomorrow. Okay, guys, we're going to drop this show now. I'm going to say goodnight, and then I'm going to pick up Reboot. You got to reboot if you're listening on Spreaker, but if you're on any of the other stations, we're going to say goodnight to PSN. But if you're on any of the other stations, you just sit tight, and I take care of everything. Okay, goodnight, PSN. Okay, which one is PSN over here, right? Yep, good night. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Mr. Potter. Okay, almost hit delete. Stop. Okay, goodbye. All right, now I'm going to reboot, and we'll be right back with more of the Opperman Report, the greatest show on earth. Boy, Jay Dyer, good guy, man. I like him. I like him a lot. Okay, it's a reboot, guys.